dive into today's episode, I just want to remind you to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. It helps us grow, reach more amazing learners like you, and keep bringing you fresh and fun content every week. So don't forget, like, subscribe, and let's keep this journey going strong. Hello, wonderful idiom aficionados, and a very enthusiastic, warm welcome back to another much-anticipated episode of Idiom Insights. I'm Emma, your dedicated guide on this linguistic journey, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you all again, ready to explore the fascinating meanings and interesting origins of some more extremely common English phrases. It's always a distinct joy to share this learning adventure with you as we continue to navigate the rich and often intriguing tapestry of the English language.
And I'm Jack, your co-host and ever a keen idiom investigator, here once more to help shed some valuable light on the colorful expressions that make English so wonderfully dynamic and consistently interesting. It's truly fantastic to be back in the Idiom Insight studio, Emma, and a big hearty hello to all our amazing listeners tuning in from all corners of the globe. It's wonderful to have your company. Thanks sincerely for joining us for another dedicated session of idiomatic exploration.
It's always a genuine highlight of my week, Jack. It truly is. Today, we've carefully curated a particularly good selection of 4 incredibly useful and highly vivid idioms that you'll undoubtedly encounter quite frequently in everyday English. Understanding these particular phrases will not only significantly boost your comprehension skills, but also provide you with more natural, nuanced, and expressive ways to communicate your own thoughts and pertinent observations with greater confidence. These selected phrases cover a fascinating range of situations, including secretly observing events, the dangers of raising false alarms, the welcome sensation of renewed energy, and the act of making a significant commotion.
A truly excellent and wonderfully varied mix for us today, Emma. I couldn't agree more. These are precisely the kinds of idioms that really add significant flavor and personality to any conversation, making it more engaging. So, without further ado, here are the 4 idioms we'll be diving into more thoroughly in this episode of Idiom Insights, unpacking their meanings and uses. First, an idiom often used for wishing you could secretly observe a particular situation without anyone knowing you're there. Be a fly on the wall. Second, a common phrase for raising a false alarm or repeatedly asking for help when you don't genuinely need it. Cry wolf. Third, an excellent expression for getting a new, unexpected burst of energy after feeling tired or depleted. Get a second wind. And finally, our 4th idiom is for making a strong, often vocal complaint, or causing a noticeable disturbance. Kick up a fuss.
Those are all fantastic and very evocative idioms indeed, Jack. Each one a little gem. Each one paints a very clear mental image, which is so helpful for remembering them and is used frequently in a multitude of different contexts. So understanding them thoroughly will be incredibly beneficial for our listeners as they engage in English conversations and encounter these phrases in everyday life, perhaps even later today.
I couldn't agree more, Emma. They're all very practical and, as you said, add a lot of color and depth to our communication. And just before we delve into the intricate nuances and origins of our first idiom, a quick and sincere request from both of us here at Idiom Insights, if we may. If you're finding these episodes valuable for your English learning journey and you genuinely enjoy our explorations into the world of idioms, please take just a moment to subscribe or follow our podcast on your preferred listening platform.
Yes, indeed. Subscribing is absolutely the best way to ensure you don't miss any of our future idiom adventures and linguistic discoveries. We have so many more exciting phrases lined up, and if you're feeling extra supportive and generous, a simple like or a positive rating on your podcast platform truly helps other English learners discover Idiom Insights and join our growing community. We are so deeply grateful for your engagement and continued support. It really does keep our own enthusiasm sky and high and motivates us to create more content for you.
It genuinely makes a massive, tangible difference to us and helps us reach more learners. Thank you all for being such an integral part of our growing community of language lovers. Right then, Emma, are you quite ready to tackle our first idiom, which, as you hinted, sounds a bit like being a super observant secret agent?
Let's do it. I'm very eager. Our first idiom for this insightful episode of Idiom Insights is be a fly on the wall.
Be a fly on the wall. This phrase creates a funny and distinct mental image, like a tiny, almost invisible, unnoticeable insect, just observing everything that's happening around it. So, what does it mean more precisely when you wish you could be a fly on the wall, Emma?
That's exactly the core idea, Jack. To wish you could be a fly on the wall means you would absolutely love to be able to secretly see and hear what happens in a particular situation or conversation, all without being noticed, or crucially, involved yourself in any way. A fly, as we know, is small and often completely overlooked, so it could theoretically observe events unfolding naturally without influencing them or being detected by those present.
So it's all about wanting to be an invisible, unheard observer, to witness something potentially private or important or just plain interesting without anyone being aware of your presence. For example, if there's a very important, highly confidential closed-door meeting happening between world leaders to discuss a global crisis, a journalist might earnestly say, "I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that room, to find out what's really being discussed beyond the official statements."
Precisely. That's a perfect illustration. Or on a more personal level, if your friends are having a private conversation about something you're incredibly curious about, perhaps a secret they're keeping, you might think to yourself, "Oh, I wish I could be a fly on the wall right now." It vividly expresses a strong desire to know what's happening behind closed doors, or in a situation where your actual presence would undoubtedly change the dynamic or stop the conversation altogether.
It definitely implies a certain, perhaps quite intense level of curiosity, doesn't it? And maybe, just maybe, a bit of harmless nosiness in some cases. But often it's just a natural human desire to understand what's truly going on, especially in situations that are significant, mysterious, or just particularly intriguing to us.
Yes, you're right. It usually stems from that deep-seated curiosity or a genuine desire for information that you wouldn't otherwise have access to under normal circumstances. It's about wanting to witness the unvarnished truth, the unfiltered reality, or the candid interactions of others when they believe they are completely unobserved and can be themselves.
So, to give another common scenario, if two celebrities who are widely rumored to be dating are seen having an intimate dinner together at a quiet restaurant, their fans and gossip columnists alike might say they'd love to be a fly on the wall at their table to hear what they're talking about and see if the romantic rumors hold any truth.
Exactly. It's precisely that wish to be an unnoticed, completely passive observer of something intriguing, important, or perhaps even a little bit scandalous. The key is the invisibility.
Okay, that's very clear. So, to be a fly on the wall means to wish you could secretly see and hear what happens in a specific situation without being noticed at all. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this fascinating idiom in a scenario?
Let's listen in with keen interest. I wonder what private event one of them wishes they could secretly witness without being seen or heard.
Mark, did you hear that the CEO called an emergency, completely closed-door meeting with all the department heads this morning? It sounds like it came out of nowhere. Nobody knows what it's truly about, but it sounds really serious. And the atmosphere in the office has shifted.
Oh, really? An emergency meeting, you say? That is incredibly intriguing, especially given the timing. There have been a few persistent rumors flying around about a possible merger with that big competitor, but absolutely nothing confirmed, just whispers. Do you think it could be about that major development?
It might very well be. Or alternatively, it could be about those unexpected poor quarterly results we heard murmurs about last week. Whatever the specific topic is, I bet it's a very intense and possibly heated discussion happening in that boardroom right now. The general atmosphere in the main office definitely feels a bit tense and uncertain.
I can only imagine. Gosh, I would absolutely love to be a fly on the wall in that meeting room right at this very moment, just to hear what they're really saying, what crucial decisions are being made behind those closed doors, and how the different heads are reacting to the news, whatever it turns out to be. The official announcement, when it comes, will probably be very carefully worded and sanitized, but to be there unseen and unheard, that would be something.
Me too, Mark, wholeheartedly. To be a fly on the wall and get the real, unvarnished, unfiltered truth would be absolutely fascinating. We'll just have to wait patiently for the official communication to be released, I suppose, but it definitely won't be the same as knowing what truly went on in that room.
That was a perfect example of the idiom in action. Mark clearly expressed his strong desire to be a fly on the wall during the secret, high-level meeting, so he could discreetly observe the candid discussions and pivotal decisions without being noticed by anyone involved.
Exactly so. The idiom beautifully conveyed his intense curiosity about a private and undoubtedly significant event, and his heartfelt wish to be an invisible observer to uncover the real story behind the corporate veil.
It's a very common and highly relatable expression of curiosity about private matters or things happening out of public view. A wonderfully descriptive phrase.
It truly is. So, next time you find yourself wishing you could secretly witness an important, private, or simply fascinating event, remember the highly evocative idiom, "be a fly on the wall."
And we'd genuinely love to hear from our listeners about a situation where you wished you could be a fly on the wall. What was happening that piqued your curiosity so much? Please do share your curiosities and stories in the comment section below this episode.
Great idea, Jack. It's always fascinating to hear those personal connections. Let's move on now to our second compelling idiom in this episode of Idiom Insights. This one, as you mentioned earlier, Jack, involves a very well-known fable.
Indeed it does. Our second idiom for today's discussion is cry wolf.
Cry wolf. This immediately makes me think of the classic story of the boy who cried wolf. Is the idiom directly and historically related to that particular fable, Jack?
You're absolutely right on the mark there, Emma. This idiom comes directly from Aesop's timeless fable about the shepherd boy who repeatedly and mischievously tricked fellow villagers into thinking a dangerous wolf was attacking his flock of sheep. So, idiomatically, to cry wolf means to raise a false alarm, to urgently ask for help, or to warn of imminent danger when it's not really there or the situation is not serious. The inevitable consequence, as in the fable, is that when real danger eventually arises, no one will believe you or come to your aid because you have established a history of making false alarms.
So it's specifically about a damaging pattern of making false claims or raising unnecessary alarms, which then systematically leads to a significant loss of credibility and trust. If someone frequently exaggerates relatively minor problems and repeatedly calls for urgent help when it's not truly needed, their colleagues, friends, or family might eventually stop taking their alarms seriously, ultimately accusing them of just crying wolf yet again.
Precisely, that's the crux of it. For example, if an employee constantly complains to their manager about urgent crises and dire emergencies that consistently turn out to be minor, everyday operational issues, the manager might eventually, and understandably, ignore a genuine urgent problem, thinking the employee is just crying wolf again, as usual. It's fundamentally about damaging your own trustworthiness through repeated instances of false alarms or gross exaggerations.
It's a serious and rather profound warning, then, about the critical importance of being truthful and not overreacting to every little thing. Because if you cry wolf too often, you simply won't be believed when you genuinely need help or when there is indeed real danger present. Your pleas will fall on deaf ears.
Exactly. The core of the idiom is that significant loss of belief and trust due to past deceptions, exaggerations, or attention-seeking behavior. It's not usually just about one single isolated false alarm, but typically refers to a consistent pattern of them over time.
So, to give another example, if a child often pretends to be sick with various ailments to avoid going to school, one day when they are genuinely quite ill, their parents might initially and understandably suspect them of crying wolf yet again because of their established past behavior.
That's a classic and very relatable scenario, unfortunately. It perfectly highlights the negative and potentially serious consequence of habitually raising false alarms or feigning distress.
So, to summarize, to cry wolf means to raise a false alarm or ask for help when it's not genuinely needed, leading to a significant loss of credibility so that you are not believed when there is real danger or a genuine need for assistance. Ready to hear Mia and Mark use this cautionary idiom?
Let's listen in carefully. I wonder who in their story might have developed a reputation or a history of false alarms in their story.
Mia, did you hear all that tremendous commotion coming from David's office earlier this morning? He was shouting quite loudly about a massive system crash and frantically saying all his important work for the week was completely lost. It sounded like an absolute, unmitigated disaster from where I was sitting.
Oh, David again? Mark, honestly, at this point, I take pretty much everything he says with a very large pinch of salt these days, especially when it comes to emergencies. Remember only last week when he dramatically claimed the main office printer had eaten his vital report? And then it turned out he just carelessly misfiled it under a different client's name? Or the week before that when he insisted his computer had a terminal virus, and it was actually just an annoying pop-up ad?
That's very true. I'd forgotten those incidents. He certainly does tend to catastrophize things and make a huge drama out of relatively minor issues or his own mistakes. So you suspect he was just crying wolf again this morning with the massive system crash claim?
I wouldn't be remotely surprised, Mark. I went over to his desk a bit later to see if he genuinely needed any technical help, and it turned out he just accidentally closed an application without saving his very latest changes. He probably lost about 5 minutes of work. Hardly a massive system crash by any stretch of the imagination. The real problem is if he keeps crying wolf like this over every little hiccup. One day when there is a genuine major IT problem, no one in the tech support department will rush to help him because they'll just assume he's just exaggerating again or it's user error.
You're absolutely right there. He's seriously damaging his own credibility with these repeated performances. He really needs to learn to assess situations more calmly and accurately before raising such dramatic and disruptive alarms all the time.
That dialogue perfectly and clearly illustrates the idiom in use. Mia astutely suspected David was crying wolf about the supposed system crash precisely because of his established history of exaggerating minor issues and raising false alarms, vividly highlighting the unfortunate consequence that he might not be believed or assisted in a real emergency.
Exactly. It clearly showed how David's consistent pattern of overreacting and making false or inflated claims had unfortunately led to a significant loss of trust among his colleagues. The idiom cry wolf perfectly captured the essence of his unreliable alarms and their impact.
It's a very common and undeniably potent warning about the fundamental importance of maintaining credibility and trustworthiness in all our interactions.
It certainly is. So, next time you encounter someone who repeatedly raises false alarms, makes mountains out of molehills, or habitually exaggerates problems, you might well say they are crying wolf.
And we'd be very interested to hear if you've ever known someone who tended to cry wolf. What was the eventual result of their actions? Please do share your experiences and observations in the comments below the episode.
Wonderful idea, Emma, and very pertinent. Let's move on now to our third fascinating idiom in this jam-packed episode of Idiom Insights. This one is all about discovering renewed energy when you least expect it.
Our third idiom for today, listeners, is get a second wind.
Get a second wind. This phrase definitely sounds like something that happens when you're physically exerted and perhaps out of breath, like long-distance runners or other athletes often experience. So what does it mean precisely to get a second wind, Emma?
You're absolutely right about the origin of that phrase, Jack. The expression get a second wind originally, and quite literally, referred to the common experience of runners or athletes who, after feeling extremely tired and noticeably out of breath, suddenly and surprisingly find a new, unexpected burst of energy and are consequently able to continue performing strongly, sometimes even better than before. Idiomatically, it has broadened to mean to experience a renewed sense of energy, physical strength, mental focus, or even fresh enthusiasm to continue an activity after a significant period of feeling tired, discouraged, completely depleted, or on the verge of giving up.
So it's about that surprising and often very welcome recovery of energy or motivation, just when you thought you were completely exhausted, mentally drained, or genuinely ready to give up on the task at hand. For instance, if you're working late into the night on a challenging project and you feel like you can't possibly go on for another minute, but then you take a short break, maybe stretch, have a cup of coffee or tea, and suddenly you feel re-energized and capable of continuing productively for another few hours, you've successfully gotten your second wind.
Precisely. That's a perfect everyday example. Or, in a sporting context, if a team is losing a crucial game and seems completely defeated and demoralized, but then they unexpectedly score a goal or make a great play and suddenly find new determination, belief, and physical energy to fight back vigorously, they've clearly gotten their second wind. It's that remarkable resurgence of capability after feeling thoroughly depleted.
It strongly implies that you've successfully overcome a period of significant fatigue or difficulty and have managed to tap into a fresh, previously unknown reserve of strength, focus, or enthusiasm. It's a very positive and often empowering feeling, I imagine.
It usually is, overwhelmingly so. It allows you to continue with renewed vigor when you genuinely thought you might have to stop or admit defeat. Importantly, it can apply not just to physical energy, but also to mental focus, creative inspiration, or even emotional enthusiasm for a particular task or challenge.
So, to illustrate further, if you're on a long and arduous hike and you reach a really tough, steep, uphill section that makes you feel utterly exhausted and ready to turn back, but once you finally get to the top and see the breathtaking view, you suddenly feel refreshed, revitalized, and ready to continue the rest of the hike with new buoyant energy, that's a classic case of getting your second wind.
Exactly. It's that highly welcome and often surprising return of vigor and motivation just when you need it most.
So, to clearly define it for our listeners, to get a second wind means to experience a new, often unexpected burst of energy, strength, focus, or enthusiasm after feeling tired, discouraged, or depleted. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this wonderfully revitalizing idiom?
Let's listen in with great interest. I wonder what tiring activity one of them might be finding renewed, surprising energy for in their story.
Mark, you were saying just last week that you were really struggling to stay motivated with your evening language classes, weren't you? You mentioned you found them so incredibly tiring after a long, demanding day at work, and you were seriously considering the possibility of quitting altogether. How are they going now? Any improvement?
Oh, hi, Mia. Yes, you're absolutely right. I was really finding it exceptionally tough for a while there. For the first few weeks of the course, by the time the class started at 7 p.m., I was so utterly exhausted from the workday that I could barely keep my eyes open, let alone concentrate on learning new vocabulary and grammar. I seriously considered dropping out and getting a refund.
So what happened? What changed your mind or the situation? Did you end up quitting, or did it somehow get any easier for you to manage?
Well, something rather strange and unexpected happened, actually. About 3 weeks ago, I was feeling particularly tired and uninspired in class, almost dozing off at my desk. But then the teacher introduced a brand new, really interactive and fun group activity, something we hadn't done before, and suddenly I just felt this new, surprising wave of energy and genuine interest wash over me. I started participating actively, and I actually really enjoyed it. It was exactly like I got my second wind. And ever since that particular evening, I've been much more engaged, alert, and significantly less tired in the classes. It made a huge difference.
That's absolutely fantastic news, Mark. So you managed to find a completely new burst of enthusiasm and energy just when you thought you were pretty much done for? That's really great to hear. Sometimes a simple change of pace, a new approach, or a different type of activity can really help you get your second wind and rediscover your motivation.
That dialogue beautifully and effectively illustrates the idiom in context. Mark clearly described how he was feeling utterly exhausted and deeply unmotivated in his language class, but then, quite unexpectedly, experienced a sudden and welcome renewal of energy and enthusiasm. He got his second wind, which then allowed him to continue with the classes and actually start enjoying them.
Exactly so. It perfectly showed that common feeling of overcoming profound fatigue and discovering a fresh, untapped reserve of energy and interest precisely when he was on the verge of giving up. A very positive and encouraging turn of events for him.
It's a very common and undeniably hopeful idiom for describing that wonderful resurgence of capability and spirit when you thought all was lost.
It certainly is. So next time you or someone you know experiences a new burst of energy, focus, or enthusiasm after feeling tired, discouraged, or ready to quit, remember the wonderfully positive idiom, get a second wind.
And as always, we'd be delighted to hear about a time you got your second wind. What were you doing? And what do you think gave you that new surge of energy or motivation? Please share your uplifting stories in the comment section below the episode.
Wonderful idea, Emma, and I look forward to reading those. Now, we've arrived at our fourth and final engaging idiom for this particular episode of Idiom Insights. This one, listeners, is all about making a significant commotion or protest.
Our final idiom for today's exploration is kick up a fuss.
Kick up a fuss. This phrase immediately conjures an image of someone making quite a lot of noise and actively causing trouble or a disturbance. So, what does it mean more specifically to kick up a fuss, Emma?
You're quite right in your initial interpretation, Jack. It certainly does mean to cause trouble or make a noticeable commotion. To kick up a fuss means to complain loudly, angrily, and often very persistently about something, to make a strong and visible protest, or to create a significant disturbance, usually because you are deeply unhappy, dissatisfied, or feel wronged by a particular situation. It strongly implies a very visible, often rather noisy, and sometimes dramatic display of displeasure or indignation.
So it's primarily about reacting strongly, vocally, and perhaps even theatrically to something you don't like or find unacceptable. For example, if a customer in a restaurant receives exceptionally bad service or truly poor quality food, they might decide to kick up a fuss by complaining loudly and firmly to the manager, perhaps demanding a full refund or a better meal, or some other form of compensation.
Precisely. That's a classic scenario where someone might feel justified in doing so. Or, on a larger scale, if a new company policy is suddenly introduced that employees feel is profoundly unfair or detrimental to their well-being, they might collectively decide to kick up a fuss by organizing protests, writing strongly worded letters of complaint to senior management, or even talking to the media to publicize their grievances. It's essentially about making your dissatisfaction known in a very clear, assertive, and often disruptive way to force a change or a response.
It certainly sounds like it can be perceived as a negative thing, especially if someone is kicking up a fuss over something relatively trivial or insignificant, making them seem unreasonable. But conversely, it can also be a very necessary and even courageous thing to do if you need to protest against a genuine injustice, extremely poor service, or a dangerous situation, right? The context is key.
That's a very important and insightful distinction to make, Jack. Yes, absolutely. If someone kicks up a fuss about a very minor inconvenience or a small mistake, they might indeed be seen by others as being difficult, overly demanding, or simply unreasonable. However, if someone kicks up a fuss about a genuinely serious issue, like discrimination, safety violations, or a significant breach of contract, it can be a brave, necessary, and sometimes the only effective way to demand attention, accountability, and corrective action. The appropriateness of kicking up a fuss really does depend heavily on the specific situation and the severity of the issue.
So, for example, if a young child doesn't get the specific toy they want in a shop and consequently starts crying, wailing, and screaming loudly, they are effectively kicking up a fuss in an attempt to get their parents to give in to their demands through sheer persistence and volume.
Exactly. That's a classic everyday example of a perhaps less justified, or at least more manipulative, kind of fuss. It's all about that strong, vocal, and often highly agitated expression of displeasure, whatever the underlying cause or merit.
Okay, that's very clear now. So, to summarize, to kick up a fuss means to complain, loudly and angrily make a strong and visible protest, or cause a noticeable disturbance, very often due to profound dissatisfaction or a sense of injustice. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this rather dramatic idiom?
Let's listen in attentively. I wonder what particular incident or poor service might have caused someone to make such a strong complaint in their story.
Mark, you will not even begin to believe the absolutely terrible, frustrating experience I had with that new online delivery company yesterday. I had ordered some extremely important, time-sensitive documents to be delivered urgently for a client, and they explicitly guaranteed next-day delivery with their premium service.
Oh no, don't tell me. Let me guess. They didn't arrive on time, did they? That's always so incredibly frustrating, especially when you're relying heavily on an urgent delivery for something important.
Didn't arrive on time is a massive understatement, Mark. They didn't arrive at all yesterday, not a sign of them. And then, when I called their customer service line first thing this morning to find out what was going on, the person I eventually spoke to was incredibly unhelpful, dismissive, and frankly, quite rude. They basically said it wasn't really their problem and claimed they couldn't even tell me where my vital package was located in their system.
What? That's absolutely terrible customer service beyond belief, especially for something marketed as an urgent, guaranteed delivery. So what did you do then? Did you just accept that appalling response and hope for the best?
Absolutely not. No way was I going to let that slide. After being treated so badly by their representative, and with my important client documents completely missing, I really, truly kicked up a fuss. I immediately demanded to speak to a supervisor. I very clearly explained the urgency of the situation and pointed out their own service guarantee. And I made it abundantly clear that their initial response was completely unacceptable and unprofessional. I admit I was very firm, quite direct, and probably quite loud on the phone.
Good for you, Mia. Sometimes you genuinely have to kick up a fuss to get these big companies to take you seriously and actually resolve a problem, especially when they've clearly made a significant mistake and are then being unhelpful or obstructive about it. So, did it work in your case? Did they respond?
It certainly did. Almost immediately after I escalated it, the supervisor apologized profusely for the error and the poor service, managed to locate my package within minutes, and then swiftly arranged for a special, dedicated courier to deliver it directly to me within the hour, along with a full refund for the original delivery fee as compensation.
That dialogue perfectly and vividly illustrates the idiom in a very relatable situation. Mia clearly explained how she kicked up a fuss, meaning she complained loudly, firmly, and persistently with the delivery company due to their abysmal service and incredibly unhelpful attitude, which ultimately and thankfully led to her problem being satisfactorily resolved.
Exactly so. It clearly showed the idiom being used for a justified and ultimately effective protest in the face of genuinely poor service and corporate indifference. It effectively highlighted how making a strong, vocal complaint can sometimes be not only necessary, but also the most effective way to get tangible results.
It's a very common and highly descriptive phrase for that kind of strong, assertive reaction when things go wrong. A useful one to have in your vocabulary.
It most certainly is. So, next time you see someone making a strong, determined complaint or causing a noticeable disturbance because they are deeply unhappy or feel unjustly treated, or indeed if you feel the need to do so yourself over a genuine and significant issue, remember the impactful idiom, kick up a fuss.
And following our pattern, we'd love to hear from our listeners about a time you felt you had to kick up a fuss to get something important resolved. What happened to prompt it? Do share your experiences, the good, the bad, and the effective, in the comments below this episode.
We always appreciate reading your insightful comments and personal stories. Well, Jack, that was quite a session. We've explored 4 more really insightful, practical, and incredibly useful idioms in this latest episode of Idiom Insights. They cover such a great range of common situations.
We certainly have, Emma. It's been another great exploration. Just to quickly recap for everyone tuning into Idiom Insights today, and for those taking notes, we learned:
First, be a fly on the wall, which, as we discussed, means to wish you could secretly observe a situation or conversation without being noticed by anyone present.
Then we had cry wolf, meaning to raise a false alarm or repeatedly ask for help when it's not genuinely needed, thereby unfortunately leading to a significant loss of credibility.
After that, it was the uplifting get a second wind, which means to experience a new, often surprising burst of energy, strength, or enthusiasm after a period of feeling tired or depleted.
And finally, we covered kick up a fuss, meaning to complain loudly and angrily, make a strong and visible protest, or otherwise cause a noticeable disturbance, usually out of dissatisfaction.
4 more absolutely fantastic and highly practical additions to your ever-expanding English idiom collection. Remember, listeners, the very best way to truly master these expressive phrases is to actively listen for them in everyday conversations, in movies, in books, and in other media, and then, crucially, to gain confidence by trying to use them yourself in appropriate situations. Don't be shy.
Absolutely spot on, Emma. Consistent practice is undoubtedly key to fluency and natural usage. Don't be afraid to incorporate them into your speaking and writing whenever the opportunity arises. The more you actively use them, the more comfortable and natural they will feel as part of your own vocabulary.
And if you enjoyed learning with us today here on Idiom Insights, and we sincerely hope that you did find it both enjoyable and beneficial, please do consider giving this episode of Idiom Insights a like, and perhaps leaving us a positive review on your preferred podcast platform. Your valuable support genuinely helps other enthusiastic English learners find us and join our wonderful growing community. We really appreciate it.
And please make absolutely sure you hit that subscribe or follow button for Idiom Insights so you don't miss any of our exciting future episodes, where we'll continue our mission to demystify and illuminate the wonderful, witty, and sometimes perplexing world of English idioms together.
Thank you all so very much for joining us today. It's truly been a pleasure exploring these fascinating phrases with you and sharing our insights. We hope you found it valuable.
Keep learning, keep listening with enthusiasm, and we'll look forward to talking to you again next time on Idiom Insights. See you later.